Crimea. What do you know about this peninsula? Might be, before year 14, you didn't know anything. But then one El Presidente, president, managed to raise a little his dropped on the third presidential term rating. For that, he needed a small victorious war. There was one region of neighboring country with a deep-rooted FSB agent network ready to shake things up, and 2/3 of its population were already ethnic Muscovians. After the escape of Yanukovych, in Kyiv ruled the temporary head of executive power, Alexander Turchinov. A piece of cake, the guys who ruled Crimea were merely bought. When acting president of Ukraine appealed to the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine for permission to start operation to deal with descended on multiple Crimea towns, military forces with no identifying signs, betrayers sitting in this council said no. So, President obtained Peninsula even without a war. But did you know that the Muscovian majority on the peninsula was reached thanks to 208 years of occupation? Crimea has its own nation, people of which were 92% of the population before occupation in 1783. They name themselves Qırımlılar, but in translation, it just means Crimeans. So-named historians of so-named Russia came up with the name Crimean Tatars to force you to think that Crimeans are part of another Asian group of ethnoses, which they also call Tatars, and came to Crimea recently. But the Crimeans didn't come from anywhere. They always lived here, and since the 13th century ident themselves as Crimeans. They are indigenous people of this land. Muscovians are those who came recently and forced Crimeans to emigrate from their native land or to be oppressed. But these are not all news. Muscovy became more or less a significant military power and a truly independent state only at the end of 1600s. Guess whose vassal was Muscovy before that? Ready? From 1474 to 1685, Muscovy paid tribute to Crimean Khan. It was named Puminki and was paid by money or in kind, such as fur or walrus tusk. So when they say that Crimea has always been Russian, they, of course, lie. If we are finding out who was whose, it is better to say that Muscovy has always been Crimean. And only in 1721 they stole the name Rus and rebrand themselves as Russian Empire. So who are these Crimeans? Let's look at the land to the north of the Black Sea, the steppe region where various Turkic-speaking nomadic tribes used to live. In the 13th century, the son of Chengiz Khan came and established the Crimean Ulus of the Golden Horde. When in the 14th century Chingizid Empire began to weaken and decline, Lithuanian Prince Algirdas reached an agreement with Rusins, modern name Ukrainians, according to which he won back the lands of Ruses, and they help him, and then join Lithuania in the status of wide autonomy. And in the year 1432, the biggest state of that time Europe was born, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, Ruses and Žemaitija. Crimean nobility also wanted to get rid of Golden Horde, but not only that, they wanted to have a profit from former Horde lands. To accomplish that ambitious plan, they needed a good ally. In 1441, first Crimean Khan Haji Giray, who was a descendant of Chengiz Khan, concluded a military alliance with Lithuania, whom had earlier helped to in Grunwald battle. Crimea acquired the help of a mighty army. Lithuania acquired access to Black Sea ports and powerful Crimean cavalry. Together they beat the Horde. Crimea became a prosperous state, thanks to its strategic location along trade routes, such as the Silk Way. The Crimean Khanate was facilitating commerce between Europe, the Middle East, and Central Asia. The fertile lands of the Crimean Peninsula and the surrounding areas were well suited for agriculture, making grain a significant export. The Crimean Khanate controlled important salt mines, making salt a valuable commodity for trade. Furs from northern regions were traded in Crimea, covering the demand in Europe and the Ottoman Empire. On marketplaces of its cities were traded various goods. Silk and other textiles from the east were traded through Crimea, along with the local production of textiles. As a key node on the trade routes between east and west, spices from Asia were traded in Crimea for European markets. Metal goods, including weapons and armor, were traded within and through the Khanate, sourced both locally and from abroad. The Crimean Khanate, especially during the 15th to 18th centuries, was indeed renowned for its horse breeding. The region's geography and climate were ideal for raising horses, making them a significant part of the local economy. These horses were not just any kind, they were prized for their endurance, speed, and agility, qualities that made them highly sought after in markets across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Horses played a crucial role in the military success of the Crimean Khanate, particularly in their lightning raids into neighboring territories. The export of horses became a lucrative trade, with the Ottoman Empire being one of the major buyers, using these horses to strengthen their cavalry. Local production of wine and other spirits from the fertile regions of Crimea was also part of the trade. Jewelry, artworks, and other luxury items from Asia also were traded. Also, the Khanate produced various goods. Livestock farming, sheep, goats, and cattle provided essential resources like wool, milk, and meat. Weavers created intricate textiles, including silk, wool, and cotton fabrics. Carpet making was a specialized craft, and Crimean carpets were highly prized. Potters crafted functional and decorative pottery. Their wares included plates, bowls, jugs, and tiles. Blacksmiths forged tools, weapons, and household items. Jewelers created intricate jewelry using gold, silver, and gemstones. Woodworkers made furniture, doors, and wooden utensils. Elaborate wooden chests and cabinets were common. Leather craftsmen made shoes, bags, belts, and saddles. Luthiers made traditional musical instruments like the saz, kemençe, and tambour. Scribes practiced calligraphy, creating beautiful manuscripts and inscriptions. Illuminated manuscripts were valued for their artistic and religious significance. Glassblowers produced glass vessels, bottles, and containers. Alchemists and apothecaries created herbal remedies and potions. Shipbuilders constructed boats and ships for trade and naval purposes. Navigational instruments like astrolabes and compasses were crafted. Icon painters created religious icons for churches and private devotion. These artworks played a significant role in Crimeans' culture. Embroiderers adorned clothing, curtains, and textiles with intricate designs. Coppersmiths shaped copper into pots, pans, and utensils. The Crimean Khanate minted its coins, built mosques and schools. Zincirli Madrasa was built in 1500, where they taught Quran, Islamic jurisprudence, theology, Arabic grammar and literature, logic, philosophy, and even mathematics and astronomy. The Khanate was a melting pot of cultures, with a blend of Turkic, Greek, and later Ottoman influences. Islam was the dominant religion, and the Khanate maintained religious tolerance. In town, besides mosques, were numerous churches and synagogues. The Khan governed with the participation of Karacha-beys, the leaders of the noble clans. Their meeting was named Divan, where all important decisions were taken. Internally, the Khanate territory was divided among the beys, and beneath the beys were mirzas from noble families. The relationship of peasants or herdsmen to their mirzas was not feudal. They were free, and the Islamic law protected them from losing their rights. The tax they paid was 1/10 of an agricultural product, 1/20 of a herd animal, and a variable amount of unpaid labor. Muscovy was the vassal of the Golden Horde, and was very successful in gathering taxes for suzerain, so he was satisfied, and for own treasury left enough. Actually, the amounts of payments were not high according to modern standards, about 1/10 of your annual turnover. When the horde weakened in 1474, Muscovian Knyaz Ivan III, who didn't want to pay owed for many years tribute to the horde, changed the suzerain, signing an agreement with Mengli Gire, the son of Haji. The horde Khan Ahmat wasn't happy about such a twist and concluded an agreement with the Polish kingdom to manage this. But when Ahmat started a campaign against Muscovia, Mengli went to Lithuania and blocked the army of Polish King Kazimierz IV, so he couldn't help Ahmat. So the horde stood on the bank of the Ugra River against the Muscovian army on another bank, waiting for an ally, and when he didn't come, returned home. From 1478, Crimean Khanate became a vassal of the Ottoman Empire, but on very favorable terms that no one else had. Crimea does not pay tribute, Ottomans pay support funds, and the Khanate undertakes to provide troops at the request of the Sultan. Khan is still chosen by the Crimean aristocracy by themselves from the genus of Gires, but the Ottoman Sultan approves his candidature. And the main condition is that the Crimean Khan must recognize the Ottoman Sultan as the Caliph. Earlier, the Ottoman Sultan declared himself the Caliph, that is, the successor of the Prophet Muhammad, that is, the leader of the entire Arab world. But to announce it is one thing, and to be recognized by it is another thing. So to find someone to recognize him as Caliph was a very important and desirable thing. The ports of the south bank of Crimea were transferred to Ottomans. It caused a decrease in revenues to the budget, so Crimeans initiated raids on neighboring lands from that time to capture spoils of war, including the alive form of that. Approximately 2 million slaves were exported from northern neighbor countries between 1500 and 1700. These slaves were mainly captured from the Cossack state, Poland, Lithuania, and Muscovy. Cities like Kaffa, modern-day Feodosia, and Gozlev operated slave markets. Merchants from the Ottoman Empire, Iran, and Egypt purchased Slavic slaves for export. Some raids reached as far as Muscovy itself. You know about such a Muscovian Tsar Ivan, this time the Fourth, the Terrible. He was able to conquer some of the surrounding lands, and once decided that he was powerful enough to stop paying Crimea tribute. Crimea Khan Devlet-Gjurey took a huge army, at least 40,000, and went to Muscovy. When the Tsar found out about it, he fled to the forest and hid there until everything was over. In the process of the siege, Devlet-Gjurey burned Moscow to the ground. Eyewitnesses wrote that there was not even a stump left to tie the horse. The terrible Tsar was forced to continue to pay tribute. But, little by little, Muscovy occupied new lands, became bigger, and 2 centuries later was able to stop paying. Really, it was in 1685. In 1700, Tsar Pyotr I cancelled tribute officially, and by 1783, the situation had changed to the opposite. Muscovy, which already become the empire, and stole from Ukraine its earlier name Rus, occupied the Crimean Khanate. Crimea did not interrupt the affairs of its vassals, as long as the tribute was properly received. So-named Russian Empire is another case. Moscovians totally eliminated the leadership of the country, putting instead own governors. Immediately after the establishment of the Muscovian government in Crimea, they began to implement their methods of managing the economy on the peninsula. Together with the confiscation of land, they began to extend serfdom to the peasants of the Black Sea lands of the Khanate and the Kubane. The Crimean population fell into deep despair and mourning. Especially bitter was the consciousness that they fell into slavish dependence on the people with whom they fought for centuries and always won. Thousands of families, abandoning their livestock, property, and parental homes, began to leave for Rumelia and Anatolia by sea and land. The population began to decrease. Due to continuous immigration during the 1760s and 1770s, the population that lived only on the Crimean Peninsula decreased from 300 to 152,000 people. Governor Potyomkin began actively urging foreigners to move to Crimea for permanent residence. The government provided significant benefits to foreign colonists. They did not pay taxes for 10 years, were exempted from military service, received money for travel to their place of residence, and were given land in the Crimea. To provide new colonists with land, local owners began to be evicted from it. Most of the newcomers, of course, were Muscovians. Landlords were coming with all their serfs. To the end of the 1800s, Muscovians were the largest ethnic group on the peninsula. The rest Crimeans who stayed were deported in 1944. Knowledge about the Crimean Khanate has been erased from history books.